So my only concern is restoring the divine order. There's no deals anyone can make. I'm not concerned with anything on this world. I don't care for women. I'm celibate. I don't care for money. I've accepted my fate, almost certainly being screened out as I'm poisoned heavily and provoked heavily every day before the year is over. Of course, law enforcement is complicit. So is mental health. And you better believe, though, there's idiots who would make the argument that despite my 19 witnesses and the abundance of evidence and the hate crime on the wall and so on and so forth, that the problem is me and not society, because America is a combination of cultures that are dishonorable, that create evil people. And I'll touch on that in this video, but first let's look at the martial art argument. Let's kill that, because there are people who would pretend that I have delusions of grandeur or I need to take my meds. First of all, I've gone over many times that the form I'm in now, okay, is reduced because of psych meds, because of covert drugging, and I have 19 witnesses, okay? 19 witnesses. I know that the form I'm in now is reduced. But I also know, based on my demonstrations or my explanations that do a few moves, that I'm also in a better martial art form and in better shape than the vast majority of Americans, okay? So right away, they're faced with that problem. I have a picture that is the most ideal martial art picture. I've compared it to Bruce Lee and other martial artists. I win hands down. Okay, we consider tone, we consider range of motion, we consider movement, ment, meaning mind. I win hands down. And then in the form I'm in now, I beat the vast majority of people in America. I go as far as to say, given 2 weeks of recovery, and I made the challenge, I could beat anybody in outdoor sparring on the planet with just 2 weeks of recovery. But I know the form I'm in right now isn't impressive. There are no delusions of grandeur. I know this is a yellow beanie. I know this is a white sweater. I know that I'm wearing glasses that have kind of black trim or, around the glasses, okay? And I didn't pick the color. My color is pure yellow. So let's look at this. The word material has mate in it. Why? It goes back to the saying, built for this, cut from the same cloth, etc. Apparent has the word parent in it. Obvious, obi vi as, obi meaning king. Ebo vi as, obi vi as, okay? King Heart Hut Temple, right? Hut, not mansion, hut. Because the true king lives humbly compared to the Western conceptions of a king. So we consider material, we consider style. Some people wanted me to describe myself as a warrior, not a martial artist, even though the falcon is the most surgical animal and it moves the quickest, 209 miles an hour, the peregrine falcon, striking downwards. Okay, these shorter guys want to say, we're the martial artists, he's some kind of brute. The white guy want to say, we're smarter than black people, he's some kind of subhuman, even though Nigerians are the most educated group in America as a race, last time I checked in a New York Times article. The most educated and most academically successful group as a race in terms of average, their average academic success, okay? So the idea that black people are subhuman is ridiculous. Okay? The idea that even though they're only 13% of America and they dominate all the sports that are similar to martial art combat in nature, and you don't give them her credit is also a very racist society. Me pointing that out isn't racist. Them pretending that is not significant after screening out the best martial artists from the African American community with slavery. That's what uppity, what do you think the Klan was for? What do you think the overseer was for? Anyone who had a conception of honor that did not allow them to be a slave was killed, and they're called uppity. It's part of what this book by a professor is about, Fighting for Honor, the history of African martial art traditions in the Atlantic world. It's called martial art traditions. So why don't they want me to describe it as martial arts? That's how racist this society is. So, and of course, capoeira, which comes from Angola and not Brazil, is described as a Brazilian martial art. You can't make this shit up. Number one, sabotage. Okay, I've gone over some of the sabotage. They've sabotaged black people all over the world. There's wordplay like AIDS that just happens to be a coincidence, I'm sure, right? AIDS, who gets aided and who doesn't? AID, Alpha ID. Okay, an acronym, ACRO, Crow, the Crow, Brandon Lee, the Crow, the symbol of the dead, and so on and so forth. People who reject the true spirit of God, which is symbolized by the sun in the African martial art traditions, the son of Ra. And Ra, not as Re, the pagan Western interpretation, but Ra as the marshaling source of the sun, the source of morality, the moral warrior spirit, grace, righteousness, all creation, true love, etc. Okay, Horus, the archetype of Pharaoh, Isis, who is said to be the wife of Osiris in one version of who Horus is, okay, is the goddess of love. So this guy is the offspring of true love in one context. In the other context, he's the direct son of God, Horus, son of Ra, and Isis is his sister. The deity of true love is either his mother or his sister. Okay, so obviously this guy's a symbol of the ideal man. He's a deity of war, the sky god, and so on and so forth. Okay, the archetype of Pharaoh. And of course, why isn't he pronounced in American culture when America's the new Egypt? Because they're fucking evil. Set and settler. And that's not a coincidence. And getting you to settle and settle down. So who gets the benefit of the doubt? Okay. The martial arts societies during the slave trade. My particular village was attacked by the Arrow Alliance, the slave traders, more from the coastal area of Nigeria. They went over there, they ambushed them. What you see here is sort of like it's similar to like a Black Panther storyline. This is a royal martial art line that has established itself for generations to become, and it is in the sky god cult center of the Igbos, if you will, Ares cult center. Okay, they were ambushed. My martial art line is the most sought after slaves, captives, and killing, and people to kill. These people get respect by cutting off people's heads. How much more the martial art king of the most respected village in the Igbo nation? Okay, pretty much the most respected martial art village in the world, to Africans at least, and to the person with the casual observer, and certainly the insightful observer. How much more did they want to kill my forefathers? Okay, they couldn't do it. 10 villages on one, an Arrow Alliance, the Ohafia, the Arrow, and on and on and on. All these different tribes got together, all these different villages, and they formed the Leopard Society, their Leopard Society, mind you, there's many of them, and they ambushed these guys, and they couldn't kill them. So this martial art line is like comparing a cheetah to a mouse in a race. You know, there's a significant martial art gap between my line and everyone else's. Okay, on top of that, America's full of craftsmen and nerds. It's the information age, the age of the nerd. Okay? My dad came here during the late 60s as a refugee, penniless. Not like Ben Carson, who's a little guy, who's a little cute little guy. He's one way you might describe him. But this guy's 6'4", 250 pounds, muscle. He cuts into people's heads the old-fashioned way. Not like these new black guys. They go, we're in medical school, right? They're using technology, and their techniques have changed. He's the old school guy, okay? No fancy schmancy techniques. Technology. He pioneered it as one of the early black physicians, okay? No hand held by the liberals through medical school and given all kinds of fancy programs and assistance. He came during a very racist time in American history, the 60s. Okay. So number 3, again, the information age. Information. What formation? What form? A formation. You know, what form are they in? The nerd, the brute. All the truck drivers, right? What are trucks symbolic of? The craft. Constructions, landscaping, plumbing, and on and on and on. These are the children of craftsmen. I can't emphasize that enough. Okay, the vast majority of Americans are craftsmen children. Not from the martial art line that rings the loudest, craftsmen children. Not from the race that rings the loudest. Nigerians, like less than 1% or something of America, are Nigerians. Okay, Nigerians are the race that rings the loudest. Okay, when it comes to martial art activity, hand-to-hand combat. These guys, you know, you see it, you know, these African Americans are basically the guys they captured and sold, okay, generally speaking. Now, sometimes they were ganged up on, but for the most part, these guys aren't as impressive as these guys. Plus, these guys were screened out. These guys are malnutritioned, okay, and they're in more Zulu kind of martial art form. These guys are the children of craftsmen and peasants who were allowed to live because they weren't screened out. Because they weren't screened out because they complied with the white power structure, including what form they take. That's why many of them are cops, many of them are construction workers, police officers. They've taken craftsman form, craftsman jobs. Many of them are gay nerds because when the liberals said, "Hey, be gay," and doors were open for you, they rolled with it. That's who we see. That is the reality of the situation. Okay. Number 4. And no offense, it's simply true. Being serious versus a hobby. Okay, I did martial arts for several hours a day. Most people took it as a hobby. Okay, so you know they're doing martial arts like twice a week. You know, at their martial arts school, I'm doing martial arts every day for several hours outdoors. Okay, I have the most impressive martial art physics and physique. Figure it out. Figure. Okay. Outdoor sparring versus indoor sparring. What are they doing? They're doing it indoor. They're training for circus moves and so on and so forth to put on a show and to spar on indoor terrain. Okay, they're not train to take me on in an actual outdoor martial arts sparring challenge. Look up Tatib, the art of getting the art of being straightforward through the use of the stick. And yes, it's more effectively done outdoors, in nature, the super nature, the essence of nature. Martial arts is about getting to the essence of nature. All right, number 5, the suppression of African martial arts, the demographics, truth versus false pride, the obvious challenge. So their collective honor of all the cultures that are allowed, are drawn into question. I go as far as to say they're thoroughly disgraced. They didn't produce women that identify the ideal man and insist on dating him. Okay, right away, what the hell's going on? They didn't give me my rightful place. All their cultures are represented in sabotaging me. There isn't a single culture that is heard of in this country that that doesn't have members and social controllers that were heavily involved in the sabotage, in sabotaging me with 19 witnesses. While they pretend 19 witnesses and the hate crime on the wall and the videos I made about them hacking my phone, and I have it on record, on camera, you can see them hacking and manipulating my phone and clicking on things and even typing things in. All right, so they're disgraced. They're also using ill-gotten gains. Again, marital, to order, to arrange, a mountain range, alpha range, right? The Narmer palette. What is the alpha range? The Valley of the Kings. These guys were tall. More I tall. Martial, more tall. Okay, marital. Okay, and so on and so forth. It's raw as the idea of an all-knowing, all-good, and all-powerful God versus the Ram. Mars scrambled is Ram. That's where they get the word martial. Okay, so who are their women? And we'll end it there. Why have I given up on women? What are their women? The women shun me. They have no excuse for it. Just because the government tells you to do it doesn't mean you should. Because a bunch of pedophiles and corporations and their allies tell you to shun me doesn't mean you should. Just because they're going to do something to your family, if you don't shun me, doesn't mean you should. It means you shouldn't. Because you live in a world where everyone is coerced into being evil people's little puppets. That's not a world that you should want your family to live in. These people send their kids at 18 years old, they train them to be patriots and go fight for this country. But they won't fight for God in principle when the country has gone completely evil. It is stupid. It's where we get the word hooker, right? They're hooked on things. They're hooked on materialism, substances, wine, alcohol, weed, cigarettes, drugs, prescription drugs, illicit street drugs. Okay, they're hooked on an erotic sex. They're hooked on conformity. Hooker. They're hooking themselves. They're addicted. They're on a hook. Plenty of fish, right? They're hooked. Hustler, right? They say they're about their money. I'm about my money. Well, what good is that? Hustler magazine. The hookers are told to be about your money. The strippers are told to be about your money. You've basically been hustled into thinking that being a hustler is a respectable move for a woman. A woman should be looking for virtue and honor and morality and focused moral intensity, not dating based on conformity and money. Okay, so these females are unworthy. Females who don't understand these basic principles are unworthy. Females who don't understand that life isn't preferred when the world is pure evil are unworthy. They should be looking for the gate, the way out, the Christos, the anointed one. I am the King of Kings in reality. When we take the moral of the story in the Bible and apply it to reality, you get the last valid top martial artist as the end of morality in this world, the Christos, the way, the truth, and the life. I'm telling the truth. They're sucking a psychological construct propaganda dick, okay? The gate. I'm the gate. I'm the way to morality. No one gets to morality but by me. You can't cheat me out of my right to live and still be moral. You can't be stupid enough to not find me and be smart enough to be moral, and so on and so forth. Okay? I am the great shepherd who marshals, who gathers. If you're not being gathered by me, it's because you're like a subhuman fucking idiot or something. You don't have the humanity and the moral sense. You haven't honed your senses. You haven't sought the kingdom of heaven. Seek ye the kingdom of heaven and be prepared for when Jesus returns. Just the other day, yesterday, I came across a video that says, are you ready for when Jesus returns? And this isn't the only person who's asked this question. People have been asking this question. There's the parable of the virgins with the oil, and they didn't have enough oil and they had to go back and they weren't ready when Jesus came back. You people are sucking a capitalist, crony capitalist, kleptocrat, trickle-down pedophile energy, information age, geek fucking dick. Okay? Instead of preparing yourself to meet your maker. There's no excuse for that kind of dishonorable, pathetic behavior and that lack of respect, lack of honor, lack of honesty, just scum. You're behaving like Very, very evil people. Even the word fair is play on words for ifra. The word point is a play, ifra scrambled. Point, in top scrambled. Arrow, raw row, or alpha row. Alpha ow. Part is trapped backwards, diva saved backwards, evil is lived backwards, devil is lived scrambled.